weekly breakdown of every NASCAR Cup Series race. Here are your hosts, Kevin Batstone, NASCAR Sky, and Jeff Davis.
Welcome back, NASCAR Nation, to another great episode of Mash the Gas podcast. My name is Kevin Batstone. Joining me shortly, Jeff Davis and NASCAR Sky, of course. But before we get into racing this week, we have to acknowledge the unbelievable loss that the NASCAR world suffered with the passing of Kyle Busch last week at just 41 years old. For more than 20 years, Kyle Busch was one of the faces of NASCAR. Love him or hate him, when Rowdy showed up, you watched. 2 Cup Series championships, 63 Cup wins, and over 230 wins across NASCAR's top 3 series. One of the greatest and most polarizing drivers this sport has ever seen. But beyond trophies and records, Kyle brought passion, emotion, and personality, intensity every single weekend. More importantly, today our thoughts are with his wife Samantha, his son Braxton, and his daughter Lennox, and the entire Busch family. The tributes this weekend were emotional, they pulled on your heartstrings, and you could feel just how much Kyle Busch meant to this sport, this garage, and millions of fans around the world. NASCAR lost more than just a champion. It lost a true superstar and one of the last real outlaws of our sport. Rest easy, Rowdy. Thank you for the memories, the moments, the experiences. And there's no doubt in my mind, Kyle Busch mashed the gas harder than anybody on the racetrack and in life.
Kyle Busch, he really was, one of those guys in the sport, whether you loved him or hated him, like you mentioned, Kevin, totally polarizing personality. He gave the best interviews when he was pissed off, he just gave the funniest answers. Like when Austin Dillon, they were talking about him, he's like, oh, who? I don't know him. Austin Dillon, who? I don't know. Stuff like that. But it was really, I have to admit, I got a tear in my eye watching his brother go out there and lay down those 8 roses. It was pretty, like I said, it just jerks at your heart a little bit. I also thought it was very, very fitting that Kyle Busch got his very first win with Hendrick Motorsports in California, in Fontana, in 2005, the same year that he won Rookie of the Year. He was the youngest driver in history for winning the pole and then actually winning the race. And then again, it was very fitting that his final race that we saw him win in the trucks, just a week and a half ago, it was for Spire Motorsports, which we'll talk about Daniel Suárez in a little bit, but seeing him give his final bow in a truck that was completely sponsored by HendrickCars.com. So again, he had so many stats, like you mentioned, and it was just a very, very, like I said, somber race to watch for many reasons. But he'll always be one of the best drivers in history. I don't know if he'll be an honorary member in the Hall of Fame this year, or he'll be in the Hall of Fame next year. But either way, you got to remember Kyle Busch.
I've been watching this sport since I was a little girl, and I growing up as a little girl, Kyle Busch was definitely not one of my favorites. I did not like him or Kurt very much, but my dad always rooted for both of them. And he loved to wear his Kyle Busch shirt. He said he liked to wear it to piss people off because nobody liked Kyle back then. He was such a good heel. But years later, as I got older, I just realized how incredible Kyle Busch is as a driver, and how, yeah, he can be a little feisty, but that all stems from the passion to win and to drive the sport forward. So he slowly became, one of my actual top favorite drivers. I bought his fire suit. I wore it for Halloween all the time. It is just, losing him is just so tragic. And you think, my heart immediately, just like Kevin mentioned, just goes to his family, his wife, his kids. It is just so tragic and just so sad. And I hope that they know that, the entire NASCAR community is with them, for them, giving them all the love and support that they need during this time.
And that's the most beautiful thing about this sport. This is a family sport. It's always been a family sport. And when Steve O'Donnell sat out there and said, we got you, NASCAR Nation, everybody up there, us, everybody in the community, it's a family. And, we pulled together during hard times. It was one of the most emotional races, I think, race weekends, like Jeff mentioned, with Kurt out there laying the roses down and seeing Samantha. I mean, that pulled on your heartstrings for sure. But it's real, and Rowdy wants us to race on, and we did. I mean, unfortunately, Mother Nature didn't really cooperate the best with us this weekend in all three races. We kind of had to hold our breath on that, but you know, how great for Daniel Suarez winning the Cup race. Obviously, Lane Riggs took the truck race, and Ross Chastain in the O'Reilly Auto Parts, and they all did that Kyle Busch bow. But I know everybody wanted to win that Cup race on Sunday and take that bow for Kyle. So big win for Daniel Suarez.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool to see Daniel out there in the same number of, the 7 car for Spire, and with Kevin, I mean, with Kyle Busch, winning the truck race in the number 7 the week prior. And there's just a lot of good memories with Kyle. And again, there were times that he would frustrate you, he'd make you mad, and he loved it, because I remember him saying, whether you love me or hate me or you're booing me, I'm getting all of the fans' attention, no matter what. And he did. He pulled it at everyone. And so it was, like I said, it was tough to watch the race this weekend without, having a really, really good time. But then again, we also had to, celebrate everything that Kyle has done for the sport and everything that he was to the sport. Everybody has to have a villain. I know Kevin Harvick and Tony Stewart were that for quite a while, and I feel like Kyle Busch kind of took over that position. And now we've got Denny Hamlin doing it as well. But he was just a polarizing figure in the sport. And now, do you guys remember ever see that? I think it was on Twitter or something, where he's driving down the highway or the road, and I think it was in Charlotte, and some couple pulls up next to him in their car, just driving down the street, and this gal rolls down her window and just starts like losing her mind. It's Kyle Busch. You're my favorite driver. It's Kyle Busch. And he looks over to her and says, "Give me your hat." And right there on the road, she hands him her hat. He signs it, hands it back to her, and they drove away. It was cool things like that you see that made him actually a good guy off the track as well as on the track. One thing I didn't know, that off the track, one thing, this was never really brought up, and I didn't hear it until this weekend, was, Daniel Suarez, he came over from Mexico, and we obviously know he didn't speak a lick of English when he came to the States. And as he was racing through, especially his younger years of his career, Kyle Busch would literally call him almost every single week after every single race and try to help the guy with, how can I make you a better driver? And this is something that no one ever really knew about him. So those are the kind of things where you're like, okay, he's a bad guy, he's a good guy. No, Kyle Busch, he was a good guy. But like I said, the things that he would say during his interviews are just, I'm only here because I don't get fined. Remember we took like 2nd or 3rd place, and he was just so pissed off. And he's like, "Yep, nope, don't remember. Nope, I'm sure so I don't get fined. Nope, don't care." It was things like that where you couldn't help but just laugh, because it was so arrogant and stuff. But he had such an emotion for the sport. It really, that's when you've got a driver, when someone can get that upset that he made just the most classic interviews. So those are one of those things we'll always have to remember about Kyle. One of the things I remember the most is when he got his sweep at Bristol in 2017, and he pulled out that broom on victory lane there, and he just started sweeping away and sweeping away. And that was like August 19th of 2017. So it's things like that you have to love about Kyle and his personality, guys.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, he has been so entertaining over the years, and I think the best part about it is it was not an act, it wasn't a show that he put on, like, it was just Kyle. He was very passionate about the sport, he's passionate about winning. And how you bring up the Daniel Suarez story, I mean, that just shows how passionate he is about racing. And then we've seen how many drivers that has raced for him, or that, he's reached out and helped, that are, currently in the Cup Series, all the young guns or whatever. And it's just, he has done so much. Like, there is almost no NASCAR without Kyle at this point. It's going to be hard to finish the year without seeing that 8 on the track. I mean, I remember when Kurt retired, and I could barely get over how they changed his name from, KY Busch to just Bush. But my favorite memory, and I don't know if this has been brought up much, I haven't seen it. I did actually post about this in the off season prior to this year, but I think it was like the 2011 or 2012 Budweiser shootout. And he pitted late or something. He came off pit road late, full speed, just passes the entire field into turn one. I mean, he just had his IQ for racing was just unmatched, and he had so much passion. He loved the race team that he built. It is just, I'm just so happy that Daniel Suárez got that win. I think it was such a healing moment, to see the 7 car, in victory lane spire and everything. I don't know. It was a good full circle moment.
And interestingly enough about Spire, the co-owner of Aspire Motorsports, his name is Jeff Dickerson, and he actually served as Kyle Busch's agent for a while. He was a spotter for Kyle Busch and a business partner, and then wound up buying KBM. So he knew Kyle Busch very, very well, and I know this is really hard on him this weekend too.
Well, and you look at Adam Stevens, right? Crew chief for Seabell. I mean, he spent most of his career with Kyle. They racked up a lot of wins. And I know these guys wanted this race to go the distance. It was unfortunate it was rain shortened. I think it was the right call. Once we lost the racetrack, it was almost 11:30 p.m. Eastern. It was going to be tough to get that thing going again. So you take them any which way you can get them. Everybody wanted that win for Kyle. But I mean, I didn't have Suarez on, in my fantasy or in our picks last week. We knew, Sky, I think you called it, a few weeks ago that these guys were coming. I mean, we saw what Hosfar did at Talladega, and we know that these guys are getting better week in and week out. But this one's definitely going to be special for sure. Not only was it a crown jewel, it's Memorial Day weekend, and everybody wanted to get that win for Rowdy.
And another thing that I mean, he had so many stats that he broke records on, but there's only one that really makes me kind of feel bad as far as just for Kyle, since we lost him and everything. For a driver that's won at least 40 NASCAR Cup Series races and never won the Daytona 500, Kyle Busch is at the top of the list, with his 63 wins and not getting there. He's one of only 6 drivers with 40 wins or more that never did win the Daytona 500. It's just, it's an elusive thing that a number of drivers have gone through. Tony Stewart was one of them as well, with his 49 wins. So yeah, a lot of good stats. Again, just someone that will definitely be missed in the sport because of his passion and his emotions that he had. Raw emotions, like Sky mentioned. That's one of the things I really loved about Kyle Busch. So it'll be weird and not seeing him in the field anymore. I'm glad RCR is retiring the 8 number. He retired the 3 number after Dale Sr. died for a long, long, long time. So who knows when we'll see it back. From what I'm understanding, if his son Brexton gets in the Cup Series, that number will go to him.
Yeah, I mean, hats off to RCR for doing that. I think that was the right move. Obviously, tough call up for Austin Hill to have to jump into that 33 and go out there and race in difficult conditions. I mean, we know Kevin Harvick had to go through that with RCR when he jumped in the 29 after we lost Dale Sr. But Brexton, he really held it together for his mother on pit road. I mean, you guys should have seen me. I was ugly crying. I had all this barbecue and all this food, and when I saw them walk onto the pit road, I lost it completely. It was just so heart wrenching. And Brexton held it together. He held it together for his dad, for his mom. Brexton is ready to carry this torch, I believe, Jeff.
I think you really will too. And another thing, just again, this weekend, like we said before, was a pretty somber weekend. If you think about what happened with the sport and Kyle Busch, we also have to remember, this is the Memorial Day weekend. The reason we have our great sport of NASCAR and our freedom and our country is because of all those veterans that lost their lives, and gave that for us. So that was a huge part of this event. So it's kind of like, a double, tearjerker. It's like, man, over Memorial Day, we have to talk about Kyle Busch. And then, of course, like I said, again, those servicemen and women that have done all that they had, and, the fallen warriors, and we have to pray for their families as well. So it was just overall is a rough weekend, guys.
It definitely was a lot of loss, a lot of celebration of life this weekend. I was definitely not expecting his family, Samantha, and the kids to be there. So seeing them and seeing the way Brexton was, it is amazing and incredible, but it's also just so sad because he's only 11. He just turned 11, like overnight now. I don't want to say you're like the man of the house, but you're trying to be there for your mom and your siblings, and you gotta mature very quickly. And I just keeping him in my prayers a lot. It's got to be so difficult, and I just it's a weird thing because yeah, none of us really knew Kyle Busch, but how long have we all watched the sport? We've seen everything that Kyle and Samantha have put out on social media about their lives. I mean, they've always been a couple to do that. So it, I don't know, it is just so tragic and so sad. Just all around it's a weekend to just remind you to kind of be present, with your loved ones all the time because you never really know what could happen. I don't know. It's just so sad. I hate this for our community. I hate this for just everything, but it'll all bring us together closer.
Yeah, it really will. I think when we all got this news, I know Sky, you were one of the first people I reached out for, and Jeff, you as well, because it was like, is this real? It just didn't seem real. It shocked the entire community. We just didn't see it coming, after winning that truck race. And it just kind of echoing off Sky's point, every day you got to live it to the fullest. You got to appreciate the people that are around you. Go to that race, spend the money and go to the racetrack, be with people. I think Carl Edwards said it best on Prime. Just be with people, be with your community and celebrate it because you never know when it's gone. You never know when your time is up. So Rowdy definitely left his mark on our sport and will always be remembered. I mean, there's just so many great memories, so many hilarious memories, so many angry memories. And you know, just grateful to be a part of it. I've been watching the sport a long time, and I've never really seen someone like Kyle Busch come through our garage area that was so polarizing. And really cool to see everybody hold up the 8 there on lap 8. And I hope we continue to do that for a couple weeks, Jeff, if not the rest of the season.
I think we'll see it quite a bit, just like we did. We still see it with the Daytona 500 and on third lap for Dale Sr. I think we'll be seeing this for quite a while. A couple weeks ago, we had one of the spotters on for Ricky Stenhouse Jr., which, by the way, had a great race this weekend. I texted her that, and she texted us back, and she said, hey, I'm at a complete loss of words. So it really did hit the community hard. But the Coca-Cola 600, it was a pretty interesting race, you guys. There was a lot of things that were unexpected. A lot of drivers I didn't think. I mean, look at Shane Van Gisbergen. He's finally getting the oval package down. For him to get a P11, I thought was pretty damn cool. And Ricky Stenhouse getting in a P12. So Shane Van Gisbergen's starting to push his way up in the points. And like we've talked about over the last few episodes, yeah, we know he's the road course king and he's going to score a hell of a lot of points out of that. But he has to get that, his oval packages down. So this is the first one I saw that I was really actually very impressed because it seemed like the entire day he was up there in the top 12 unless he was on pit road, guys.
Yeah, I was going to say I was really, really impressed with him as well. But, someone at Trackhouse has got to figure it out. That's for sure. And I can't give too much shade to Chastain because I know he did get kind of involved in a little wreck there. But it hasn't been an easy season for that team. Besides, obviously, Van Gisbergen winning the road courses. I mean, even Connor Zillage got involved with that Cindric wreck there. So I'm glad that someone over there at Trackhouse is getting it together because they're going to have to. It's going to be a really long rest of the season if they don't figure it out.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And SVG, I mean, what a fantastic night. I mean, I was impressed. I had a group of folks over here that are used to watching him just dominate road courses, and they're like, "Look, we got SVG up in the top 5. He was contending for stage points on an oval on our crown jewel. So they're doing something right. We've said it for the last year and a half. SVG is probably one of the most massively improved drivers in the shortest amount of time. Right? He came into the sport as a road course ringer, wanted to dial in his oval package, and they're doing it. When we look at Trackhouse as a whole, like Sky was saying, they're definitely not where they need to be. So for SVG to be, kind of carrying these guys, he's locked into the chase as we sit right now, right? He's comfortably sitting in there. We know we've got a couple more road courses between now and the chase. So I do think SVG will make that top 16 cut, but they just need to keep chipping away. And this was a good way to do it. He also led 11 laps. Was out there, on a restart, kind of trying to hold these guys off, Jeff. So that, for me, that was one of the best oval performances I've seen at SVG.
100%. I mean, I think Trackhouse is trying to go in the right direction, and they're doing a lot better. And Chastain and Carson Hocevar kind of got into it a little bit, and I think Hocevar actually what we used to call chat, when Chastain would wreck someone, because you get right in the back of them or get them in the middle of a turn, you got Chastained. Well, I think, Carson Hocevar got him chastained. But it was a decent race though. I know Sky, one of her favorite drivers, is Austin Cindric, and unfortunately he spun. I don't think there was any contact on that. It looked like he just kind of got loose, which I think happened a few times during this race. I don't know if he got help or not, but it didn't look like it to me after I saw the replays. Uh, what do you guys think about that one?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think there was if there was contact, it obviously wasn't like intentional contact, but it does make me feel a little bad for Cindric because the last few weeks he's been really leading the Penske stable. I mean, Blaney's had a season all over the place and not too much fault of his own. He's doing really good piloting the 12 car, but he's got so many problems on pit road. And then whatever is going on with the 22 team, I don't even know what to say about them. So it sucks to see his day end like that because he has been really good and really improving. And I think, there was a lot of talk in the beginning of his career about if he deserved to be in that 2 car. But I think that, I mean, he's not like overly good or anything, but I think that he's earned a good enough spot. It was a good day for the 5 car as well. I know he was helping push the 7 there a little bit. I don't know if you guys caught in the beginning one of the restarts where Suarez like put his hand out the window and was like,
Yep.
come on to the 5." But the 5 got him out there. It was good to see Larson get a good finishing position because I know that he's similar to Logano right now, a very up and down. Well, the Logano is just on like a down season, but the 5's been up and down, so it's good to see him and the 24 get a top 10 position.
Yeah, they needed it for sure. And Larson did have a relatively decent day, a top five finish, led 14 laps. They needed something to go right. Oh, Willie B there coming in P9. So something to build on for those guys. We're obviously headed to a Penske track with Nashville. We look at Ryan Blaney winning there last year, Joey Logano 2 years ago. So hopefully those guys can right the ship there. Jeff, you mentioned somebody getting chastained. Once again, shout out to Kyle Busch who coined that phrase. That was a Kyle Busch phrase many moons ago that has kind of
Was
stuck
it?
around. Yep, Kyle Busch was the first one to come up with that. I got chastained. So just once again, nod to Rowdy for some of the one-liners that he came up with. But Tyler Reddick, I really thought. I mean, my pick last week was Denny Hamlin, and I think Denny was in great position all race. It was basically a battle between the 45 and the 11 until we got later. And what happened with Chase Elliott? I mean, just loses it off turn two, and then he says in his interview, "Well, that's just the Coke 600. I can't seem to finish these things." But I mean, the race car just came right around on him, all on his own, just plowed it right into the fence. Jeff.
He just spun out. And that's unfortunately for the 9 car of Chase Elliott. This is his first DNF of the year. He's doing pretty well in points still. But yeah, it was just weird to see him do that. And I mean, Cindric, man, what a hit. I mean, his car was destroyed in that front end. As a wreck just like that took out Dale Sr. when it didn't look that bad. So thank goodness for the safer barriers that we have in today's sports, since they've added it. And Sky, correct me if I'm wrong, because you'd probably know this information better than I do. But wasn't yesterday Joey Logano's birthday?
It was, in fact, Joey's birthday
That's
yesterday.
what I thought.
Good point. Happy belated birthday, Joey. I'll get to shout you out on the podcast.
Heck yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure it was a tough day for him. It was a tough day all around. But yeah, we're going to Nashville, which I like Nashville. It's also one of them tracks where it's so hard to pick who you think's gonna win because it literally could be anybody just because of how crazy and chaotic. I mean, heck, Joey won one time, 5 restarts with like no gas. So who even knows? Maybe we'll get something crazy coming up next week or this weekend.
Hey, another Kevin, a minute ago you mentioned Kyle Busch coined, the getting chastained quote, which, like I said, I absolutely love because hell, we carried that one for a while. One of the things that I thought was totally cool was, Kyle Larson. I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but they have their names right above their door. He put his name up there as Tiny Kyle.
Tiny Kyle, yep.
Yep. And that's because Kyle Busch, when Kyle Larson first started getting into the sport and they got to know each other, that's what Kyle Busch nicknamed him, was Tiny Kyle, because obviously there's quite a bit height difference there. So to see him throw that on there, I wonder if he's going to keep that for a while, if he's going to keep that on the car, if it was just for this race. But I thought that was pretty damn cool of Kyle Larson to do that.
Yeah, agreed. And it was just great to see everybody carry the 8. Everybody was wearing Kyle Busch swag, and I'm sure we're going to see a lot of that, in the weeks to come. So, We're on to Nashville. Very interesting racetrack. We haven't done a ton of Cup races here. I'd still like to see the Nashville Fairgrounds. I think we had mentioned, last week when we were covering the All-Star race as a possible landing location. I think Nashville Fairgrounds would be great. Everybody wants to see the Cup Series at the Nashville Fairgrounds, but at least we have representation in Nashville, Tennessee with the Nashville Superspeedway. It's a very difficult racetrack. You got that concrete surface, kind of that 1.33. It's like in between, that 1 mile to the mile and a half intermediate. Definitely, like Sky mentioned, I mean, I think the first time, Sky, you were ever on the show before you became a full-time host was after Joey won that race in like 9 overtimes.
It was. I can't believe, yeah, it was in fact.
Damn, Kevin, good memory, brother.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah, I'm impressed.
I remember a lot of strange things, but when it comes to racing, I always remember dates and who won and where we were. But it's tough to crunch the numbers on Nashville, just because it looks, if you look at the numbers, it looks like a Penske track. I do think Ryan Blaney's going to go in my fantasy lineup. I mean, you got to, right? But you also have to still look at who's been dominating, and that's the JGR Toyotas. Maybe even Spire. Maybe they got a shot in the arm that they needed. Is Hendrick ready to go up there and start leading laps, winning stages, and contending for wins? I mean, we know Chase Elliott racked up 2 wins. He's obviously in a good points position, but Nashville's just kind of a tough one to predict and break down, Jeff.
Well, like you're mentioning, it is. But Toyota, I mean, if it wasn't for Chase Briscoe getting wrecked out, I mean, he was kicking ass for over half the race. He was really up there. He was up in the top five all day long. And then he got wrecked. And if he wouldn't have been, look at where the other drivers finished. Christopher Bell finishing in P2, Denny Hamlin finishing P3, and who I picked last week for the win was Ty Gibbs. He got a P6. So if Chase Briscoe wouldn't have gotten wrecked out there, I think he would have been in the top 10. I really do. I mean, he was just dominating for so much of that race.
Well, once again, like we said, the JGR Toyotas, we kind of knew. We were all saying this is going to be a Toyota track, but we had Aspire Chevy go up there and win it. So I don't know, Sky, what are you thinking for Nashville?
I'm gonna go with the 22 because I'm eventually, if I pick him enough, eventually he's gonna freaking win. As long as he can just manage to stay out of trouble, which Trouble's his middle name, so probably not. But I feel like, I mean, even Cindric would be someone really good to put in your lineup. But we can't forget about the people who seem to always be there at the end, like Zane Smith and Todd Gilliland, who end up avoiding all the wrecks and getting, a P10 out of it or something.
Yeah, that would be good. I mean, those are really good picks. I'm having a hard time with this one because you know I really thought Kyle Larson had a really good chance of winning the race this coming weekend or this last weekend at the Coca-Cola 600. But the two drivers I'm kind of looking at, and I think Kevin might have almost taken them. I'm looking at two. I'm looking at Ryan Blaney in the 12 car. And I'm also looking at the 20 of Christopher Bell. I think he had such a really good weekend this last weekend, and that I think he can get it done next week. So I'm going to go with the 20 car Christopher Bell.
Well, I'm going to take your other pick then that you left on the table. I'm going to take the 12 of Ryan Blaney to go back to back at Nashville. Yep. I mean, he led 139 laps here last year. It just kind of fits Blaney's driving style. There's just something about these tracks that kind of, play into it. And he's found ways to, still maintain top fives, top tens, getting stage points. He's consistent. And that's one thing that Ryan Blaney, I think, does really well. Joey Logano definitely needs it, Sky. This is probably their best opportunity so far this season to go out and contend for victory lane. So I'm going to have to go with one of your Penske boys, with Ryan Blaney.
Ryan Blaney did move up the points by a spot. He's only 174 back. Tyler Reddick, he doesn't have any stage wins if I remember right, but he's got the wins. So some of these guys need to start doing more stage winning. But seeing Ryan Blaney get up there now, third place in points, I thought was pretty cool. So Denny Hamlin, he kept the same position in second place. But seeing Ty Gibbs actually come up 2 spots, and then with Chase wrecking out, dropping down 2 spots. So there was a little bit of movement in the standings. So, Kyle Larson moved up 2 spots, and Chris Buescher moved down 2 spots. Christopher Bell moved up 3 spots. So we're seeing a lot of, jockeying back and forth as far as the playoff standings go. But Tyler Reddick still got a pretty good hold on it, guys.
Yeah, and you know what's sad? If you scroll down, Kyle is still listed in the standings. But I was gonna mention Ty Gibbs myself because I was impressed when I seen that he was P4 because I feel like, I mean, I would say overall this is probably the best season I've seen out of Ty Gibbs. Um, I'm glad it's clicking for them over there in the 54 camp. I don't know. I'm just really, really impressed with him. I just not something that I had on my bingo card for this year.
Yeah, I think that win at Bristol and just this consistency at the 54 has shown has definitely come to life, and he's found his groove, and definitely going to be a contender. The 54 is definitely probably going to go on my fantasy lineup as well this weekend, Jeff. I know you took him for the Coke 600, and again, consistency pays off. I mean, sure, he's led 95 laps on the season, but I mean, top 9 top tens. I mean, that's second best to Tyler Reddick's 10 top 10. So he's right there. The consistency always pays off in this sport.
Well, I'm going to have to say now that we're coming to a close, still have to kind of close this one out to Kyle and remember that final bow that he got in the truck race. So thank you, Rowdy.
Yes. Rest in peace, Rowdy. We will miss you so much. Thank you for everything you did for us in the sport.
We race on for Rowdy. He mashed the gas the hardest for sure. And we race on into Nashville. Love the Prime coverage. I think the guys do a fantastic job. And, looking forward to getting to the racetrack this weekend. Out there in Nashville, have some hot chicken. That's what they're known for down there. And we'll be back next Monday night to break down all the action from Nashville. Hopefully no weather delays. We're getting that time of year. We're seeing a lot of rain in that part of the country. So this one's for Kyle Busch. We love you, Kyle. And until then,
Mash the gas, guys.
I feel the sweat